Rock Solid Families wants to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast. Casey's has grown to be one of the largest and most unique garden centers and gift shops in the Cincinnati tri-state area. Whether you are looking to take on that next landscape project or simply add a little home decor to your house, Casey's has you covered. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Call them today at 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home.
Welcome to the Rock Solid Families podcast. I am Linda Hutchinson with my hubby, my birthday boy.
Not yet. Don't push it.
Well, depending on when you listen to this.
Well, maybe maybe it's already passed.
Are having a milestone birthday this month.
You have to put it that way.
Milestone.
You used to say at 40, you'd say, well, you're over the hill. Well, I'm 20 years past the top of the hill.
What do you say about that? Oh,
you're freaking old.
The old fart. I don't know. That has nothing to do with our topic today, but I just wanted to celebrate you.
I don't think that came off as a celebration.
Yeah, no, it is. I just hope if you're listening.
Well, thank you. Yeah,
it's June 2023 that you will find Merrill or reach out to him and tell him happy birthday.
We are a heavy.
And if you do the math, you can figure out which one it is.
We are a heavy spring, summer birthday family.
Yes, we are.
I don't know if other families have but pretty much we start in April, March, the very, mid-March. And man, we just roll heavy all the way through the summer.
Kids and grandkids.
Yeah. And, we still love the people who are outside that season, but we're just heavy.
Yeah, we better say that.
But we're heavy in the summer season for birthdays.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are not talking about that.
Age is a relative term anyway. It's how you feel, right? I mean, come on. I mean, what's the statement today? Like, hey, you do you, live your own truth.
Age is just a number.
Age is just a number, and so that
Have you seen me walk lately? Have you seen how my knees work, people?
Actually, I was telling my friends, we just had a great time away with a bunch of my girlfriends from high school. Some of them I've known for almost 50 years. That's how long I've known them. And we were just talking about it. One of them said we weren't allowed to say, because we're getting too old or we can't do that anymore. And so, but it is funny because we're walking different, our level of hiking and stuff. And I told him, I said, your body's kind of falling apart to a point where I'm actually able to keep up with you, in our walks and our.
That hurt. That hurt. So what, I've always enjoyed cycling, but what I have found is having two wheels under me is a whole lot better than 2 feet under me. So I can still do a whole lot of the wheeled things. I even tried to start walking again. A few weeks back, I was getting up every morning walking, and my knees just were cursing me.
Honey.
And it was like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going on big walks. So it wasn't like I can't walk anywhere, but it's like, so yeah, So there you go. It's
all right. Well, now that we're done complaining about how old we are, we really are talking today about something that is such an important topic, though, honey. We have got to discuss this, and we've done it in other shows. But man, this becomes a relevant topic in our office constantly, and that is how do we prepare our kids for the spiritual battles that they are up against today? It does not look like it did when you and I were growing up. I mean, we've talked about this before. We were surrounded with other Christians.
Right.
So we really didn't have to learn how to defend our faith. We didn't have to be ready for battle because pretty much people agreed with us. And there wasn't this alarming disconnect and this anger toward Christianity.
Well, and it is age related. That's kind of why we are talking about the age thing, because, as much as we like to complain about the physical part of the body not working well, the beautiful part about the aging process is the wisdom, is the ability to look back in the rearview mirror and say, oh my gosh, okay. And the difficult thing about being that young person, that teen or 20-something, is you've got that physical body, which can actually create a level of arrogance and self-reliance and these kind of things. And you think you know it all. and the wisdom part is not there. And so a lot of what this show is going to be about today is how we have not always done a very good job of equipping our kids with the wisdom and knowledge necessary to use those physical gifts that they have at those younger ages, to use them well. Instead, they're using them for whatever feels good.
Yeah.
And, we want to talk today about, like, man, are we equipping our kids well for the spiritual battles?
Yeah.
And to think that they're not spiritual battles is right there is like where we as parents a lot of times have really lost our own sense of what's going on out there.
Yeah, and the statistics are very alarming, hon. The latest Pew research tells us that at least 70% of students who go off to college or are college age will walk away from their faith as a Christian. This is U.S. students. So this is, 18, 19-year-old students who are done with high school, who claim to be a Christian, are going to walk away from the faith. And the scary statistic is that 90% of them would say, if you polled them, they already lost their faith before they ever got out of junior high and high school. There was a disconnect. There was a very high level of just unhappiness and discontent as far as what they agreed with and what they didn't. And so that means while your children are under your roof, they may still even be going to church with you because you're telling them to in Sunday school, but they have emotionally and spiritually checked out. And that's alarming.
So let me ask a rhetorical question. and I would hope it's a rhetorical question for you guys out listening, but I don't know if it is. So do you think there's any correlation between the 90% that you're talking about that have kind of walked away from their faith and the 1 in 4, the 25% of middle school and high school kids that would say they are depressed? That I forget the statistic now of the girls, the 1 in 7 that have questioned their gender identity. Do you think there's a correlation there?
Well, we're going to dig into that today. That's a great question.
You didn't answer me, Linda.
And we're going to discuss how we as parents can slow down that youth exodus that's going on in our churches and maybe even in our own home. And so that might even be happening and you don't even realize it. And they're just kind of telling you what you want to hear and you're kind of feeding them what you want them to know and really hoping for the best. But before we get into that, let's jump in and thank our sponsors.
Yeah, so let's thank Maxwell Construction and Casey's Outdoor Solutions for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast. So we just want to thank those guys for contributing and supporting and sponsoring the work that we do. So if you're in the Cincinnati tri-state area and you've come across these guys in business or even an acquaintance, think to thank them for what they do. And if the opportunity comes to do any business or service through them, please take it. They're great people, good community people. So we want to thank those guys.
Yeah. And if you haven't heard, and if you didn't listen to our podcast a couple weeks ago, we have a new team member.
Yes, we do.
Meredith Scudder is our new assistant director of Rock Solid Families, and she is also another one of our faith-based coaches. And Meredith comes, hun, and this is a perfect topic for Meredith because as she told us in this last podcast that we did a couple weeks ago, that she had a crisis of faith, of really making her faith her own and really believing God for who he says he is. And so there was some hard days for her. And as she said, she was a wilderness therapist working with adolescents, and God met her in her own wilderness. And so that is really an amazing gift that we've been given to have her on our team. And so if you have a teenage girl or a young adult, or you yourself are maybe a single mom, or just questioning your faith and wondering, how do I reconcile the things that maybe have happened to me, whether it be some trauma or maybe some abandonment or whatever that is that really makes you doubt and question the love of God, then please reach out to us, because that's what we do every day. And now Meredith joining our team really just really enhances what we can do. Yeah.
Also, as we're doing some announcements here and reaching out, we want to remind you guys that we need you. We need your help and your support. Rock Solid Families is a 501c3 nonprofit, and that means that we try to get support to do the ministry that we do. And in doing that, we don't always charge high fees. In fact, very low fees all the time, because we've said many times, we never want money to be the sole reason why somebody doesn't come and get help. And so we rely heavily on sponsorship and donations into our ministry. And so we're kind of in our spring reach to say, hey, if you know anyone who has benefited from the work that we do, either the messaging through the podcast or through actually coming into the office or through Zoom sessions that we've been able to help, please, think to maybe put us on your charitable donations list.
Yeah.
We definitely need that. And so you can do that by going to our website at rocksolidfamilies.org, and there is a donate tab on there, and just click on that and follow that through. And then you can get the benefits of the tax donation or tax deduction for your donations there. So, we don't make any mistake about it. One of the things I learned a long time ago is as you get older, you recognize your gifts and your not so good gifts. And we know people who are gifted at running businesses and generating money and funds, but maybe they're not, they don't know how to preach, or they don't know how to counsel or whatever. And taking the gifts that they have and pairing them maybe with the gifts that somebody else has, maybe a preacher or a coach or a teacher, that's how we get kingdom work done. And so, if you're some of those people out there like, I could never do that, I have no interest in doing it, but I do want to help people, then feel free to come alongside of us and help us out.
And as Christ followers, it's important that we band together and equip our kids for the culture war that we are in today.
Yeah.
And the reason why we are a 501c3 faith-based nonprofit is that we don't want government regulations over us.
Right.
We don't want to be told what to do. And so, again, we do want to be told what to do by a higher power, Jesus Christ, right? Than our government. And so we know that there is a battle going on for our hearts and our minds and for truth. And so if that's something that you're passionate about too, join our team and partner with us in this work that we're doing here to strengthen our community, really one family at a time, through the power of God and His Word.
Yeah. Well, let's get into our topic a little bit. Okay. So the idea here that, we get our kids into the late high school and into the college years, and we could comfortably say 70% are going to definitely question their faith and even walk away from their faith. And then there is that whole idea, well, train them up in the way they should go, and when they are older, they will return. What we have found is that's true in many cases, but not nearly as many as we would like, because we have created a lot of other godlike things out there that are very attractive to people. And so, it might have been that back in the day, people could go away and think they had a better way, and then they find out life's hard and you struggle. But now there's a lot of safety rescue nets that are not life-saving. They are just a little bit more forgiving in the interim. And so a lot of our kids don't come back.
Yeah. And I've heard this a lot. Oh, well, they'll come back eventually, right?
Right.
And so the statistics do say that you're right, that there are some that come back. So out of that 75% that leave, you have about 45 to 48% eventually come back when they start their own family, when they settle down, kind of when they sow their wild oats, as some people would say.
Right.
But if you do the math, hun, on that leaving, you eventually, those returning to the faith, you're losing 30 to 35% of your total church population with every generation. And so we see that. I mean, I've worked in the church for 20 years in full-time ministry. I've seen that decline. And again, you'll have these spikes and you'll have these waves, but on a a lot of churches closing their doors. And so you may be asking, what's going on? And, we're glad you asked, because that's why we're here.
But I want to go even a step further, or maybe slightly different, because you mentioned it from the church perspective, which is totally good, and I get that. But the outcome of leaving the faith is not just people could leave church. It is also the remnants of all of the tragedy and hurt that takes place as they leave the faith. These are where these oftentimes drug addictions, children out of wedlock, loss of jobs, depression, anxiety. These are all of the different things that also can be very closely correlated to people leaving the faith, as I talked about the rhetorical question before earlier. And so, yes, it's sad that we're seeing church numbers drop, but there's also even greater concern about the pure harm that's being done. Yeah. And so you're coming back later into your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, trying to do repair work because of the leaving earlier, the prodigal son story, right? And luckily it sounds like he came back early enough that he was not so damaged that he, couldn't live well.
And some people would say, oh, I go to church, but really like maybe once a month. Yeah. And so I knew as a, full-time staff member that when I started to see that drift away from small groups and church attendance and serving, that there was something deeper going on. And so again, we're not saying we're just trying to fill the churches. We're trying to say this is just one indication of a bigger problem, and that is really the disconnect we have with our faith being a personal relationship with Christ instead of something we just check off the box. So we can't assume that our kids are going to come out unscathed by the deceiving lies that are swirling around in our culture today. Just because it worked for you and I, hon, is a horrible argument for doing nothing or being passive in these vicious and sometimes deadly attacks on our kids' faith and their future. And if you're older like me, you probably did grow up in a Christian-friendly world. Your children and mine don't have that luxury. And we are now living in a post-Christian world where being a Christian is a minority, and even worse, looked upon as evil, like you're a hater. And that's very alarming.
So let's move in, hon, to the whole idea of how we start to equip ourselves and our kids. And I say ourselves, I'd like to say, well, how do we equip our kids? But the problem is I don't know how to equip my kids if I'm poorly equipped myself. Right. And we have found ourselves in that situation, and our own parents found theirself, the generation prior in that. And so there's a term that you probably have heard, many of you have heard, called apologetics, right? And you want to tell them really fast, because that's kind of where this whole framework of our conversation is going to build around this idea of apologetics.
And I never heard of the word, honestly, growing up.
Not growing up,
In the seminary is where I first heard about it when I was taking a class in it. And I was like, I guess I'm going to learn what apologetics is,
I honestly thought it was you learning how to apologize.
And
it couldn't be probably farther from that.
So I'm going to use 1 Peter 3:15. We use it a lot in our podcast, and it's a verse that we should all really memorize and hide in our heart. And it says, in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have, but do it with gentleness and respect. And so the English translation of this Greek text, the Greek word for to give an answer is apologia, which actually means to make a defense. And so as a Christ follower, we have to be ready to make a case for why we believe what we do. And so that's where we get the term apologetics. Growing up, I had never heard of it, but this spiritual discipline is literally defending the faith. Making a defense like a lawyer does in a trial, right? And so we know that we're going to face challenges to our faith, questions of our faith, concerns. And so our kids, oh my gosh, they are being deluged by this. Right. Our own kids in a public school in a really, suburban to rural community school are being challenged by it. And so we've got to train our kids to defend their faith.
The idea in parenting that we would like to assume should hold water is you do this because I said so. And, listen, I've said that, right? And I've always wished that were the case. But the idea here is when you start to grow kids to be strong and independent and sufficient within their own resources, they should start to ask you questions that make you go, well, I don't know about just you saying so. And this is where if you do not even know how to defend your own faith as a parent, and so this is where we get our middle school to high school to college age parents who are parenting those kiddos who are going, well, I'm just not going to fight it. And rather than it being a fight, it should be a very good defense of why you have done what you've done. And if you just say, well, we've just always done it this way, it really does not hold water, because you've got kids today that are getting thousands of times more information into their brain every day. Yeah. And so they can quickly come to defending whatever it is that they've seen that's become exciting or interesting to them. No. And so you've got to be that step ahead of knowing how to defend that.
Yeah, and you got to remember the last part of 1 Peter 3:15, and that is to do it with gentleness and respect. So we're not saying to beat the Bible over someone's head. And much of the things we're going to talk about today comes from a great resource. I encourage everyone to write it down and to go. It's free. It's a website, but also a book. I have the book in front of me, Mama Bear Apologetics. And so it's written by several women. One of them we personally know. She was on our podcast a year ago, Alicia Childers. And so, but you can get a hold of a lot of these resources. They have blogs and podcasts of their own and book resources. And if you go to mamabearapologetics.com, mamabearapologetics.com, and it's a great resource. A lot of the things we're going to talk about today are on there or from this. But I really recommend, because there are so many questions out there that we're not going to talk about that your kids are going to throw at you. And I don't want you just to throw up your hands and wave the white flag. Right. I want you to, again, have a good discussion, allow the questions and the doubts and the comments, but then you have conversation and share with them how to dig for answers, not just spoon feed them the answers, but dig for them. So we're going to give you some advice on that.
Yeah. So we're going to walk through what we've created is kind of 10 different areas, 10 different steps that you can kind of walk through so that you can just feel more secure in what you're doing and what you're leaving your kids with.
Yeah, and how to prepare them.
So the very first one is really looking in the mirror. Yeah. Excuse me. And making sure that your own relationship with the ultimate truth is healthy and is good and is understood. And so having your own relationship with Christ. Remember, if you have been that person who has drifted yourself, maybe for whatever reason that happened to you, and you're now starting to rely on because I said so, you're just not going to hold up well to that. Okay. Yeah. And so the very first thing is that, like, I need to start seeking for the rock on which to build my house. Yeah. And if your kids are older and that's happened later, we've done entire shows on how do you reset that foundation, because there are ways to do that, but it looks very different than if you start from the cradle.
Yeah, you can't give your kids something that you don't personally have yourself. So number one would be to maintain a growing relationship, personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And so you can't help them discern truth from lies if you are being swept up by the lies or you don't know what the truth says. So please model for them what healthy looks like. And that's what's going to make a difference.
Yeah. So then the second thing that you do once you start to feel like, okay, this is something I need to do for me, then we go to number two. Okay. And number two is to actually start to lay this foundation very early on with your children. So in Deuteronomy 6, this is 5-9, this is something we've referenced so many times. I remember when we built our house, I was looking at you like, what are you doing with these? You've got markers in your hands and stuff, but you'll get the picture here. It says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at the home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on your door frames of your houses and on your gates. And so this is the idea that you don't just one day spring it on the family. Like it becomes part of your everyday, right? Like we see people that wear necklaces with a cross, or they'll wear a ring that has some connection to their faith. They'll have some signage or a cross or a crucifix up in their house. These are things that are very purposeful in your house. And you do them for the idea that your kids are slowly starting to understand the presence and the importance of them.
Yeah, so surround them with biblical truths and godly people. But we're here to say that taking your kids to church and the Sunday school is just not enough. They're not bad, but gone are the days where that's enough. We have got to help train our kids up and prepare them for battle, and laying the foundation of those biblical truths early is going to help. But some of you may be listening and say, oh gosh, well, I've already dropped the ball on that. So here we go. What do we do next? So
I would go so far as to say, hon, that it's as irresponsible as allowing the school to be the sole teacher of character quality.
Yeah, you're right. We talked about
of
that
sex
before,
education. Like all of this has to start at home first, and the schools and the churches and everyone else should just be endorsing and reinforcing what you believe is to be true and right. And so, yes, the churches are awesome, and the schools can be awesome, but it better start at home.
Yeah, it's not enough. Earlier and earlier, our children are being confronted with very sweet-sounding teachings, which are lies, and very appealing worldview. And so we've got to lay that foundation. So here's number 3. Be discerning yourself to the lies around you. And so get educated. Go to mamabearapologetics.com and listen to their podcasts, read their blogs. There's been things that, hon, I have kind of been swept up in, that I went and found out like, wow, I was being kind of swayed by the lies of culture. And so they're everywhere, and they're weeds that want to grow and choke up and choke out what God is doing in your family's life. So, man, the only way we can reverse some of these statistics is to recognize the lies for ourselves and then help our kids recognize them.
We forget that all plants have some sort of flowering mechanism to them, and even weeds oftentimes can have a beautiful flower that seems to be attractive. And so, that's where we get caught up so often, that we have fallen for, man, but that seems pretty good. That's right. And then you come to find out that it actually undermines or cuts off something that's much better. So that's what you're getting at there.
So in the book, they talk about being careful about just picking the weeds and thinking that you're done, because that's kind of like playing a game of whack-a-mole, and that the weeds are going to come back up. There's going to be more weeds, right? So for instance, we were just talking as a family around our table just today about a store that has been very perverse in their pushing of an agenda, a worldview that we would say we don't agree with.
Right.
And I'm not going to get specific, but then we were talking about that. And instead of just saying, you're not allowed to go in that store anymore, okay, we can't just make it so black and white of this is good, this is bad, because there's always a little level of good in the bad, and there's always a little bad in the level of the good. So we've really got to be careful that we make it so elementary and black and white that our kids think it's either all in or all out. And so we've got to have a discussion about as to why and what to do about it. And that's where we have to be discerning.
And and teaching then your kids to understand to hate the sin, not the sinner, right? And so right away, I think that's where the defensiveness starts to come from either side. That means you don't love us, or so you're very judgmental on us. And
so if my friend goes there or believes that, then they're evil.
And so teaching our kids that when they see a kid that behaves in a way that they've heard to be not right, that they don't immediately throw that kid to the curb, but instead they start to separate and discern that what this kid is doing is not acceptable, but that kid himself is still a child of God.
Yeah. So number 4 kind of goes along with that, in that as parents, we have to remain calm and gentle and respectful about questions our kids have. Don't attack them. Don't shut them down. Don't throw their friends under the bus. As a parent, it's important we don't lose our mind and go on this crazy rant, because that's just going to solidify we are a hater and we don't understand and we're so old-fashioned. Things that we're hearing from others that have different worldviews, it only drives them away to that. So, hon, we've experienced this firsthand when one of our sons went off to college, and he came back with a lot of questions. And inside, man, I am like dying inside. But outside, I had to be honest, like, okay, buddy, let's talk about that. Right? Not scaring them away, not shutting them down, but really inviting the conversation.
Yeah, that's such a great point, because I think sometimes when we see our kids exposed to something that we think is sinful, or the Bible says is sinful, we want to say, stay away from them. But then the other side is, well, are you telling me you should just go ahead and hang out with that kid and just ignore the sin? And this is actually why we're doing the show today. What we're actually saying is you equip your kid so that he knows how to engage, if necessary, with that other kid who's doing that. And so if in the immediate, the right now, I may have to say, I don't want you hanging around that kid. But then my job as the parent is to start to equip them to say, okay, how would you? How do you differentiate? You know, what do you need to do so that you remain strong in your faith and the understanding of sin and right and wrong, and yet still not throw that other person away. And so that's the equipping part. Like, oh my gosh, this is the battle right here. I better train my kids up well.
Yeah. Number 5 is don't spoon feed them with the answers. Instead, challenge them to think critically and biblically. Give them an idea of where to go and how to start, but then don't keep cutting up, as they describe it in the book. You can't keep cutting up their meat. Can you imagine our 16-year-old still cutting up her meat, or 17-year-old? You know, it's like eventually you're going to have to teach them for this next one that we're going to talk about, but we've got to let them handle some tough questions, work through the answers and the plausible reasons for it on their own. Don't just keep telling them what to do, because the minute they leave your home, which is what is happening, then they're going to throw everything out like that was yours. And so if you help them to think critically, then they start to really discuss that.
Yeah. So this then does take us into our 6th point. And so you have coined this up as teach them to chew and spit, which comes from the book.
This book, yeah.
Right. And so that sounds kind of gross, but let's explain what that is. And so the idea of actually allow your kids to actually see and to witness and recognize some of these things that are happening. And then whether it is something to actually continue to take in or to go, oh no, that's not good. That's a poison. I need to reject it. And, that gets dangerous, right? That's the danger. That's the risk part. We have plenty of friends who have homeschooled their kids. And I know lots of great reasons to homeschool. But if the sheer reason to homeschool your child is to completely protect your kids away from this world, you just start to have to ask your question, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you teach them to do the chew and spit, all right, to be able to take it in? Or because Linda and I came on, we did not homeschool, but that was actually the attack that we got from our son when we I guess apparently did a sheltered enough life that when he went off to college, he came back and he met a lot of cool, fun, different people that were living differently than what he was. And because they were cool, fun, and exciting people to be around, he was like, I'm really upset with you and Mom. I am upset that, you've made me think that this is, that everything evil. Is bad. Yeah. And we're like, okay. And so we had to walk through that process of us doing a better job, and then him testing, chewing, and spitting. Okay.
Yeah. Our daughter was in a speech class where she had to prep a debate speech, and she was actually given the side she didn't agree with. And she was all upset, like, how am I going to do that? Which is a great thing to do, because she had to think like those that wanted that side to win.
Right.
I think it was about wearing uniforms to school, I think, or something. And so she's like, well, and I don't want uniforms. Well, okay, well, you have to put yourself in their place and debate it and defend why you would want uniforms in a school. And so it was a very interesting process for her to really be able to think critically, to be able to defend something she really didn't agree with even. And so, if she had to do that with something she didn't agree with, then hopefully she's going to naturally be trained to do that with something she does agree with or believe in. So it's good practice.
Yeah. And I feel like maybe this is a place where I want to have a little input, and maybe it's the right place, maybe it's not, I don't know, with the whole chew and spit. There are many things that I could chew on and I could say, this doesn't taste so bad, and I could swallow it. And it was like, well, I didn't get sick. I wasn't so bad.
Wasn't so bad.
Okay. That's actually, if I do that, but over time, I recognize that my diet is not very healthy. And over time, this does not play out as well. And so it may be in the instant, I didn't get instantly sick, but I've come to develop a not so healthy lifestyle of eating. And so part of one of the ways that we can help our kids start to see things, whenever there's research, whenever there's science possible, okay, when it's available, when your kids start to suggest a different way, okay, maybe a way that you would deem as being sinful, go back and look at the history. Go back and say, well, let's go look at, let me just use living together before getting married. Well, let's go look at the research, okay? Because, this is where we want to say, well, hey, kids, because the Bible says so, or hey, kids, because I said so. What we know is that when we go against God's way, God's nature, not human nature, when we go against God's nature, things don't work well.
Yeah.
And so the science bears it out every time.
And common sense.
Which it doesn't seem common sense in the moment. It seems common sense would you should try the person out before you marry them, right?
Gotcha.
But in the long term, so when there is research available on real life choices, say, hey, you know what? I get what you're saying. Maybe you think it would be better to live together. Why don't you do me a favor and let's look in to see how it's worked out for other people so that they can actually see, oh my goodness. And now you no longer become the gatekeeper of that decision. Now they can actually get some facts, okay?
And
so it's very powerful to do.
Yeah, and as you said, though, hon, there's always going to be an exception to the rule. They're going to be like, well, so-and-so did it, and they turned out okay. Okay, there's always exceptions, but a pattern, we're talking history over time. And so letting them figure that out, we're talking about phones, and you and I were talking before we pushed record about how the research and the history is starting to come in now. Right. But when we first got phones, people were like, oh, cool, these are fun, right? This is in your pocket, they're so convenient. And now time is playing out where we're finding out through research that, man, science and God and common sense are telling us that this isn't always a great thing.
Science and God are 100% aligned.
They
are 100% aligned. And so when we don't think they are, it's because of our misunderstanding of something. And so that's a great thing you bring up, hon. Like when our older sons, they didn't even have smartphones, okay? Because I think the smartphone came out right around 2007. And so initially, parents were not making stands at all on that. I remember 2008, 2009, that I had first, second, third, fourth graders in our elementary building carrying smartphones, okay? Because you could say in your gut, I don't think that's a smart thing to do, but you really didn't have anything to base it on other than I feel like. But now, as you said, man, the research is so hot on this that we can point to actually how it's going to come out. Yeah.
So number 6 is teach them how to chew and spit. Number 7 is practice, practice, practice. While your children are in your home, walk alongside them, watch movies together, listen to some of their music, play a video game with them.
Do I have to?
I'm not saying all the time because we're teaching them how to do it on their own, but I want you to see and I want you to walk with them and have discussions around the dinner table about things that are happening at school, decisions that they or their friends are making, and that you can help them practice this discernment, thinking critically, playing it out, going through the long term again and again. Make it a safe place for questions and discussion.
Yeah, good stuff. So I like number 8, okay? And I would like number 8 because this is actually, this is something that has gotten really hard for us to figure out lately. And so number 8 here is train kids to focus on truth, not feelings. And so some people might say facts, not feelings, okay? But if they're truly facts, then they are truth, okay? And so training a kid to focus on the truth and not the feelings, it's not to disregard feelings. In our work, we don't disregard feelings because feelings are the fuel of or motivation of emotion. But when feelings get misdirected and start to alter truth.
Or get stuck.
Yeah, truth is what it is. It is truth, right? And it doesn't matter how you feel about it. And so teaching your kids to ultimately submit to the truth, okay, and be very careful to either see that their opinion aligns with the truth, or if it doesn't, how they actually have to go look in the mirror and realign themselves, because the truth doesn't change because of your feeling.
Right. feelings change like the wind, and if God doesn't give you what you want, or maybe a person lets you down, then you equate that with anger or disappointment toward God. And so it needs to look at, okay, what's God's role here, you know, and what's man's role. And so number 8 is to train kids to focus on truth, not feelings. Number 9, train them to go to God's.
You just got. Oh, you're right. Yeah, good. I got in front of myself. Go ahead.
Train them, number 9,
I'm sorry.
Train them to go to God's word for the truth, okay, and direction. Not just because mom and dad say so. Challenge your kids to dig into God's word for themselves. And man, if you can do this while they're under your roof, maybe you guys can do some kind of devotion together. Maybe you can, have everybody read and come back with their own interpretation so that you can kind of help them walk alongside that. Again, start early and transition very early so that they're doing it for themselves.
But what if you just say God's word is your opinion that it is the truth? Right. And so that's
you mean
where,
if they say that to
you?
you?
Yeah, because oftentimes what we hear, this is, listen, it was written by a bunch of different people and it's all up to their interpretation, and it was back in those times. And so, all of those things are very legitimate questions / statements. Okay. And so this is where you as the parent, you do need to kind of buck it up on your understanding. Do you really believe it's the truth? And that was, to this day, my favorite verse is Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and nobody gets to the Father except through him. And the reason, it's not a very fancy verse on its surface, but it was a thing that made me go, okay.
Yeah.
This is where it all boils down to.
Right.
Because if I can't, we could argue about terms. We could argue about the genealogies and Greek versus Hebrew versus English. But at the end of the day, if I don't believe Jesus is who he says he is, we've got problems. And the whole Bible is for naught.
Right. He's a heretic and a liar, man, a crazy man, right?
Yeah.
And so, and so train them to, you ask kind of a question. If they don't believe that God's word is truth, then ask them what their truth is.
Yeah.
What are you building off of? What are you making decisions off of? Because sometimes kids don't have a backup plan, but then they're like, okay, well, maybe I should find something. And that's kind of where the questioning can come from, and the doubts.
I was able to very off topic a little, but you hang with me, people, hang with me. I was talking to a guy in the fitness world yesterday, and he and I'm a little bit older than him, but we've come up through the same era of a lot of the same trainers. And for years, the training for squatting has always been that put knees do not go past or over your toes. And so, and I'm one of those guys with knee pains. And in the last 3 to 5 years, all the research used to say, don't let your knees go out over. And now the research, or at least the talk is, no, to get a truly strong knee, your knee has to be able to go past. And so he and I were joking with anger. Are you kidding? How many people have we taught to squat wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, that's the problem with, we say, well, I'm going to trust science. Well, science is still, it is an effort to seek truth, but it is not truth.
It is not truth, right? So it supports truth, but it's not in its fullness.
Science
right?
is not truth.
Right, yeah.
It is an effort to seek it.
Yes. So number 10, keep your eye on the prize as parents. And so our goal, Merrill and I, is to raise strong, discerning followers of Christ who are prepared and trained to defend their faith in the world and to share that good news with others. And so if we don't keep our eye on the prize, because there's a lot of parents out there who are guilty parenting or they're insecure parents. And so they're giving in and they're giving them what they want and they're literally just telling them whatever they want to hear. And man, is that the goal that you have, is to be their friend, to be popular, And so you want them to know not just what they believe before they leave your house, but why. That's so important, and how to defend that to others.
Yeah. Yeah. So guys, we hope that this conversation does not end here. We hope that it is something that you first converse in your own mind about how you've done these, and then bringing them into your home and into church and to throw it to God, right? Like, okay, where I'm at with these things. So we challenge you to start to move in this direction of equipping your kids by equipping yourself first, and then moving out through your kids so that they can learn to stand strong and know why they're standing. Okay.
Yeah.
I think one thing that's really important is we've talked about in so many different ways when we're trying to talk parenting is way more is caught than taught. And so the idea that your kids see you rest in your confidence of the faith that you have versus you running around panic and you flip-flopping on ideas and you being uncertain. So the whole idea that there is a calm confidence in you, not because of you, but because of what you know. All right. I think this is such a valuable thing to create a whole different foundation of peace in your house, that you don't get rattled easily, even when your kids push back or when the world, you watch the TV show and you go, oh my gosh, didn't know that was going to come on. Okay. These are things that you don't have to like, but you don't have to get emotionally rattled and then lose your mind in terms of how you're going to work through it.
Oh, hon, that is so good. I mean, there's an old commercial, a deodorant commercial that says, never let them see you sweat. And so if you're panicky and sweating about, oh my gosh, what's God going to do? And all, you've got to trust God. I mean, we had this conversation with a group of high school friends of just, our future political realm and panicking about that. And it's like, do we believe God for who he says he is and what he can do? And if we do, then we're going to do our part. And then we're going to trust him for the rest. And we got to do that with our kids. They need to see this confidence, like you said, this calmness, this steadiness. And we can't freak out and panic and go ballistic on them when they doubt and question it. God's big enough to handle their questions. And so we've got to be calm enough and steady enough and confident enough to be able to have those discussions, not shutting them down, not making everything evil in the world, not making their doubts evil, but to allow them to work and wrestle through that while they're under your roof.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So very good stuff. We hope we enjoyed putting it together. And so we hope you guys really enjoy the use of it. Hey, if it hits you in a good way, great. If it hits you that somebody else needs to hear this show, please share this. Get it to those people that need to hear it. We're out there to be available. If you recognize that you yourself are struggling or know somebody that is, reach out to us for either one-on-one coaching or a Zoom coaching in person or through the airwaves. So you can get us at 812-576-7625. Check out our webpage at rocksolidfamilies.org. You can see what we're up to. All of our different shows, both for Strong Dads and for Rock Solid Families podcasts, are listed on there. So you start going through it and see what you can do.
And again, remember, we have a new team member, Meredith Scudder, who really would love to walk alongside, especially if you have a teenage girl or young adult woman in your life that you want to connect with somebody who could be that help for them to battle those spiritual battles that maybe they're having, or identity issues or confusion that they're having. So hopefully this has been a help to you. Hopefully we would love to connect with you. And if we can help anyway, please get a hold of us at rocksolidfamilies.org. So again, for Merle and I, thank you for listening to Rock Solid Families Podcast, building a stronger community, one family at a time. Make it a great day.
Rock Solid Families wants to thank Maxwell Construction for sponsoring the Rock Solid Families podcast. For over 30 years, Maxwell Construction has been a leader in turning dreams into realities, building schools, banks, restaurants, and many other commercial and public facilities. Maxwell Construction has made it their priority to not just build buildings, but to build into their community. So if you have any construction needs, call them at 812-537-2200.